خیال خیش بگذر چه مجاز کو حقیقت ز خیال خیش بگذر چه مجاز کو حقیقت چو گذشتی از کدورت چو گذشتی از کدورت به صفا رسیده باشی. Welcome to the Hazara Pioneers Library. Onamunji Mechidtv. A Vizier's Daughter, the tale of the Hazara War that we have so far presented Nosago and Bakulo together. I hope you are sitting together and watching and mixing the two ends of a complete circle. Presented so far 10 chapters. The mock engagement has taken place. Majazi, haqiqi niyesta, majaziya. Ki tu bor ek chand waqt ho rahi, Gul Begum, Khane Mohammed Jan. Khidmat turmana, tu da kar khar dashta bash, una da kar khar dashta basha. Ki mo I balara Colonel Farashara sarh chap kani. I barnama ki tasmim migra da endi chapter 10, Murim chapter 11. Thwarted. It was nothing of a journey on which Gul Begum set out that bright spring morning. And she needed no horse to take her the 19 short miles that lay between her village and Muhammad Jan's. But custom demanded that she should ride. She was a bride on her way to her affianced husband's house, and the old lady, her grandmother, rode too. It was de rigueur that she should do so. Then there were 2 packed animals laden with bedding and clothes, besides rice, raisins, almonds, and other dried fruits. A herd who drove 3 fine fat sheep and 2 servants to take care of all. Ini qafile Aruse Majazi Rawana Batarafi Muhammad Jan. But the girl's heart was heavy, and her grandmother was not encouraging. I don't approve of this way of doing things. Ali Khusur Madari Ghulam Hussain, Yani Haji Gul Begum. I don't approve of this way of doing things. The old lady kept saying, I never heard of such an arrangement. A young girl of your position being named on a common man like Muhammad Jan, with no ulterior intentions as to matrimony either. It's against all customs and all precedents. And it seems to me against all decency. I don't believe that any good can come out of it. No one ever gains anything by breaking through the rules made by their forefathers. It's not likely that we can judge as wisely as they did. Still less likely are we to improve on what they laid down as fitting and proper. I don't understand your father. I think my father quite as capable of judging of what is right and wise as any man who ever lived. همین رقم تصمیم گیریش وقت ما زندگی ندیدم. His daughter replied testily. But it seems to me awful that such a scheme should have to be devised. بالکل قابل شرم‌آور است ما چیکار کنیم دیگه. لیکن از اینکه بهتر decision تو بیدی. Who is this tyrant that he should dare to send for other men's daughters and command wives where he should ask for them? ای باز کی است که هر طرف حکم کنه بگه ما این فلانی خاتونم. Oh, I agree with your father in not sending you to Farad Shah. God only knows what that man's heart is made of. Then sinking her voice, sometimes I think he's not man at all, but a devil in human guise. Your father did well not to send you there. Nothing sort of a curse could have resulted from that. However, what must be, and since it has been decided that you are to go to Muhammad Jan's, well, go you must. But you mark what your old grandmother has to tell you. Never for one moment let them imagine that you put yourself on a level with his women. Show them from the first moment who you are and who you mean to remain. That you are in fact Ghulam Hussein's daughter, not Muhammad Jan's affianced wife. If you were to begin by putting yourself on an equality with people like that, there is no knowing what advantage they might not take of you. Make them wait on you from the very first, or my goodness, before you know what has happened, you may find yourself waiting upon them. از روز اول بگین خدمت طلب کو که خدمت که تیمر وگرنه او سرت روزی بایر که تو بینگن یک روز خودت رو خدمت که داری. Never fear, the girl answered proudly. I shall never let them fancy themselves my equals. که ما برابر از نباشم. My father has sent them handsome presents for this favor that they are showing him and is willing to give them more if he is satisfied with their treatment of me. He has told me that himself. They will be well paid. Assuredly, most assuredly, the old lady went on, Ghulam Hussain may have faults in that he thinks he knows more than any man that ever lived. But he is not mean. Irbugum ki baz kudurut niya manezu. Kinatuz niya, kamzarf niya. No one could accuse him of ever doing anything shabby. On the contrary, if half your mother tells me is true, he goes too far the other way. خودکشی بیگانه پرست مگه. And is over generous with his goods and is extravagant in his habits. This Chiwaza Sahib, too fond of fine clothes and plenty of them. This was a My father has the very simplest taste. Bisyar sada zindagi dara padarazma, the girl said coldly. But he knows what is due to himself. Haq khor mishnasa in his position by Sidi Wazir. And he insists on having it. The tariq zindagi ki wo bari khud ko qaila, hamo maqam qaila, wo bilkul haq khor dar wada mana. Wagarna padar mam mishnasa. Bisyar insani sada wo Mukhlis. The old lady was much struck with the girl's whole attitude, any way of expressing herself, and was somewhat mollified. She felt sure she had been the means of advising her granddaughter how to behave during her coming visit, and she was not without hopes that all might yet go well. You have taken your embroidery. I hope you must show them how girls of your positions are accustomed to employ themselves. امو سامانی کشیدگاری خمرای خدره دیگه نه اون مورا دسته باش و نار نشان بده که دختری که از حیثیت استو باشه او کارش چیه او میشن قرار ده پیتاو برای خو گلدوزی منه. The old lady went on after a pause. It is a beautiful kind of work that those poor Kandahar women do. It is well that you have learned it. خیلی خوب هنر همی خاتونای خیلی عذاب مشن که جور منن گلکاری قندهاری خیلی زبردسته. خوب شد که تو یاد گرفتی. But Gul Begum did not answer. She was watching some fat partridge in the road that almost seemed to tempt their natural enemy, man, to destroy them. They kept so close to the little advancing party on flying on a few paces ahead, soon to be caught up again. Kim روی بریخو و دزی فکرای اجی خونیه روی بریخ یک دنه چاق کاو گرمینگرنه توپ منای طرف بس توپ منا میبینه گای دست چپ گای راست گای توپ منا طرف کی امی دشمن خو آدم را زبیتا گفتاری که بیگر مرنه یعنی بیگر تو. If I were a partridge کاش ما کاو گمدم. She kept thinking, I would spread my wings and fly far, far away, beyond all harm, off to the wild hills where there is no one to entrap and to destroy. उस जाई बोरम कि न सयाद बाशा न कातिल बाशा مگر ما خوگ نیم ای خوی خاکمنده خود چیزا بیتا زیر پای مشه دارم مگر ما بیا بلی من لغا کو. I would not linger round these frequented paths. ای راهایی که مردم مرا مایا اصلا خلق خوش منمایا. Quite a large party of Muhammad Jan's friends and relations met the travelers about a mile outside their village. یک میل دور از the پیشقدمی زن آمده از او طرفی محمد جان. All waiting and ready to escort the girl to what they believed was to be her new home. کلمو بیری ورده قول جمع کده که باری به پشت بیری. Two donkeys laden with sweets being perhaps the most noticeable feature in the group. دو خربار کده قد شیرینی. They should have sent some cooked food instead of paltry sweets. That was the proper thing to do, the old lady whispered to her granddaughter. But what do they know, these poor village people? It is just as well, perhaps, that they are so simple. They will give the less trouble later on. Azab kam mushi. Gul Begum made no reply. She heeded neither cooked food nor sweets. The whole thing was a mere farce to her. Tamam she ek drama. And she paid but little attention to her hosts. What little she did notice was not at all pleasing to her. Aslan the fikri cheez na budamat ki minganid khosh na imad. How dare Muhammad Jan send a bridal party to me, to meet me, as though I were really going to be his wife? She thought to herself, he has taken a great liberty already. My subsequent refusal to marry him will be the talk of the whole village. یک چند وقت بعد میگن که اردویش جدا شده. ضرور تمام قریه خواهد خبر شد. Perhaps of the countryside. This is not at all what my father intended, I am sure. With these ungracious thoughts in her heart, it was little wonder that she failed to attract her new guardians and produced an impression not altogether favorable in their minds. But Gul Begum would have cared but little about that even had she discovered it. The arrangements at the house suited her quite as little as did the reception party. داخل خانم که رفتم چندان خوش نمد. همونطور که زیبت شمد. The whole thing had been got up hurriedly. امیت معلوم شد که بسیار امیت عجله کار شده. Of course, but there was a certain amount of display and nowhere any taste. یک چند چیزا رک بالکت دونجیش تا ورک یک چیز آوار کده بلیش. مگر تیست میست نیش. خورد هر چیز. The girl felt out of tune. گفت کجام دوم and wished she were going home. ما خانه مرم. ما مرم خانه پس. Tell them quite openly that I am only here on a month's visit until the disturbance with Afghanistan was quieted down, she whispered to her grandmother. Ajay, inar bugi ki maam yag ma bari yag maam dom, I janjali jang qad Afghanistan ki khalas shud bas markas raikh mira. And the old lady readily acquiesced. But she did not dare to add that this naming of the girl Ol Muhammad Jan was a mere ruse, though she knew that there was a private understanding to that effect between the girl's father and her supposed suitor. She had received strict injunctions from Ghulam Hussain to do nothing of the kind, and she would never have dared to have disobeyed him. داماد چی گفته بود غلام حسین وزیری حضرت کی دوزی کار اینمیری که گفتم این پیغام را بیدی زیاد از طرف خود خو هیچ کار کردنی نیتو. 3 days the old lady stayed with her granddaughter, and then her visit was over and courtesy demanded that she should return home. ولی دیگه صاحب 3 روز بیشتر دیگه متو برداشت نمیتونی. یک روز میمان 2 روز میمان 3 روز بلای جان تو کش بدیاتی. As Khani Muhammad Jan. Gul Begum did not love the old lady very dearly. Chandan khosh nayamad az ajiye kho. But she dreaded her departure. Nami khastam ki bora. Agar bora am khosham khoshandan nadara mera. Agar raft kar masha. One good she certainly felt she had done, and that was that she had established a rule. Yak cheez ek qanun jor kedat. That the girl should eat alone, unless she herself specially asked to others to join her. Which according to custom she almost always did. But she kept herself apart and seldom spoke to anyone. One day she asked for a clean cloth. خب یک روز این مجبور میشه که از خلوت برشنه بگه یک کالای صاف یک دسترخوان میخواه دیگه. For her food spread. It takes away my appetite, she explained, to see dirty clothes about my food. لاتای کنار که میگن بخیم اشتها از اشتهای نان خورده ممنون. یک چیزی صاف بیارین که ما میره دسترخوان جور کنی بایی. Muhammad Jan looked on and said nothing. He did not seem over well pleased himself, though the possession of the rifle reconciled him to do anything during the first few days. دل چې رمو رایفل گرفته بود یک لحظه مگر چندان خوش نیامد از این رفتار از گل بیگم که هیچ چیز خانتوماتوم دی بریز مجوشته. The parting between the grandmother and granddaughter was more affectionate than any they had ever had before. از تمام بهترین الوداعی پارتی بینی از یونوسا و حاجی اینوی بود دیگه. یک قدر گریه‌مونه. Gul Begum actually wept when she saw the last of the old lady disappearing down the pathway. Never mind, it won't be for long, she said, addressing Muhammad Jan's mother. And then I shall go home. Don't make too sure of that, the elder woman replied. We have not seen the last of the Afghans yet. But if you apply yourself to work industriously, the time will soon pass. We all grow old quite soon enough. بچم اره تبال کجای جنگ تو خلاص شده پس هم ده تمام که تو برنامه داری یک پس باری خانه ده کار خود خوب بمیتر سر خور مشغول نگاه کو وقت تیر مشه. I have brought my needlework. Kashidakari Khurmamunum Gul Begum replied coldly, I will get it and sit in the shade and work hard, and then, as you say, the time will soon pass. But days passed on, and then weeks, and still there was no sign of the war abating. She heard that the men were all up in arms, and sometimes she ventured to ask Muhammad Jan why he had not gone off to the war. یعنی تمام دیگه اسلحه به دستن و در روی بروی اند جنگن. یک روز محمد جان پرسیدن نمیگه تو چی اینج لگ لگ شده داری؟ تو چه جنگ نماری؟ تو چه کم مرتی؟ But he was a man lazy by nature. And it took a good deal of stirring to rouse him. Unless he saw a chance of making money. Then, indeed, it was astonishing the energy he displayed. You have been here 3 whole months, he said to Gul Begum one day. Does your father think that a rifle and 3 sheep are to pay me for that? The girl looked up, surprised. I should think they have paid more than for the little food of yours that I've eaten. Does he say, Ma? Oh, that's it, is it? Muhammad Jan replied. I am to get nothing for the trouble of protecting you and for being kept away from my fellow countrymen who are up in arms all over the mountains defending their country, while I am kept here to look after an idle woman who cannot even answer civilly when she is civilly spoken to. Gabzadoy khorna mufahama ma in shto minji barjay ki bor munji de maidan jang. Chan berek tufang ve dudana bara. Gul Begum gave some angry retort, and hot discussion ended by Muhammad Jan assuring his guest that it was his high time she learned what her true position was, and that he would take an early opportunity of teaching it to her. The girl winced. The long absence from home was beginning to be torture to her. But now that her jailers, as she called them in her heart, were going to treat her with harshness instead of indifference, she determined. She determined to write to her father and let him know the sorry plight that she was in. که داستانی غمانگیز ما باید برای اتیخ نوشته کنم که دختر تو کدام حاله و اتای تو جایی How as a child she had resented those writing lessons. بس دی چې ما یم درېزګي ما چقدر بد مې مامات کې نوشته مګ بیش نوشته کو. How hard she thought it that she should be obliged to sit still and make all those little strokes and dots while other girls were running about the hills or sitting playing in the sun. Now she felt most truly thankful for the persistency with which her father had taught her. آفرین پدرک بزرگوار که امروز اینا در کارم آمد نه که ما باید نوشته کنم حال دل را. But she had some days to wait before she could get hold of either pen or ink. ولی خوب دو خانان pen نه ink بی. ولی از کجا پیدا کنم؟ وقتی که پیدا منه اینی خط نوشته منه نامه را برای پدر جان. از طرف گل بیگم. To my noble father, to Ghulam Hussain, she wrote, after expressing my respect and assuring you that I never cease to pray to God for your well-being, همیشه در پناه خدا باشین پدر جان, I write to let you know that I can no longer remain under the roof which you provided to shelter me. دزو پناهی که تو من رایی که ما دیگه تیر نمیتونم بایی. I feel as if I must leave or die. یا مردنیم یا رفتنیم. No one here has a kind word for me. My father, but I have borne that. یا کلمه مهربانی من ندیدم دیسی ما. 3 days ago, however, Muhammad Jan insulted me. And I judge from his conduct since then that there are worse things to follow. مرا خبردار کرده که خیر از منیه. More than once I have been told that it is high time this long engagement were brought to a close in the usual way, and that if my family make no preparations for a marriage ceremony, then Muhammad Jan sees no reason why it should not be dispensed with. جواب رست بدین. یا خو بدین دختر را گلیش رم بدین تمام چیزا را که یک طرفشونه یا خو باید ببریده. Especially as no dowry has been offered. You may, in your wisdom, O my father, think that these are mere threats intended to keep me humble. در نظر است تو یه تربایه که اونا فقط مرا میخواد ترس بیده امرکم تاکه مرا تابع نگاه کنه. And to show me how great an obligation I am under to Muhammad Jan. But this is not so. Rashi Bugum, there are many little things that I can hardly write about that show me that if you do not come and fetch your beloved child, she will be made to suffer misery and would be to her worse than death itself. پدر جان اگر داد من نرسی یعنی می دختر تو ذلیل شده خوار شده در ذلت خواهد تباه و برباد شد. Come therefore and see with your own eyes. And if after seeing you still think that my sorrow at being parted from all I love makes me exaggerate things, then I will abide by whatever you may decide. اگر ما دروغ گفتم ابد هر چی که تو گفتی. But come only once. یک دفعه بیا. And see how things are. خچیمی سر ببین. This house is not far. If I were married, I can understand that you would not think it right to come and see me under the year. اگر مرد شوی میدادی خب ما ده یک سالم تو روی تو دیدنی نبودم. But I am not married to Muhammad Jan. And I'm never going to be. So there is no law or custom to keep you away from me. After expressing my devotion to you, my beloved father, and promising to be submissive to whatever you shall decide after seeing me, I sign myself your sorrowing daughter, دختری غمزده تو Gulbegum. Having accomplished the task of writing so long a letter, a task very great even for a girl who had been as carefully taught as she had been, Gulbegum watched her opportunity to get it sent to her father. ورخ نوشته کرد آفرین درشه که از کجا قلم پیدا کرد از کجا تو نوشته کردی برا لیکن این حال اصل کاریه که تو چرخ مرسن نیره. She had long since decided on her messenger که قاصد از مکی باشه دیس سکیره کنم. It was to be the little herd who pastured the flocks up on the hills within easy distance of the village. نزدیکی قریه منجی مال میچرید. She had spoken to him about it. قد از چوپان گفتاد کبزد. And had arranged that she was to watch his master's sheep and goats while he ran off to her father's house with a precious message. که ما اوشنم مالتره. تو زود برو زود بیا اینه دخانه غلام حسین برسنم. So having penned it, she started in the direction of the hills. بعد از نوشتن طرفی کوراوی میشه. Some 3 miles away, soon however she heard footsteps behind her. همین رئی شد دید که یک نفر از پس پشت میاد. And turning around, she saw Muhammad Jan coming rapidly towards her. The girl literally trembled with excitement, then calmed herself with the assurance that he knew nothing of her letter. أول دفعة ورختاشت. باز گفت بو خبر نداره که ما خط نوشته کردم به پدرم. And that if she could not evade pursuit that day, she most certainly would the next. خواه امروز بخیل میگه نمیشه. قرار آرام باش. And that a day more or less could make but little difference. خواه خیر یک روز دیر میشه. Where are you going? Asked her would-be protector angrily. آله خب bodyguard دیگه بوده ایسا. What makes you start away from the house without giving warning to anyone? امیت به خبر یک طرف رایی میشی تو؟ کجا رایی؟ The girl said nothing, but pointed to her embroidery which she carried in her hand. بسمال نشان داد ما این جور نمیدارم. And what rubbish is that? He asked surlily. What do you mean by stitching it garments fit for a chief when you are destined wife of a poor man who does not care to see his wife decked in such finery? این نزاکت بازیار بل برای خانه وزیر و میر خانه غریب آدم. I am no man's destined wife. ما خطوی کس نیستم. She said haughtily. I am the daughter of Ghulam Hussain, and as such am entitled to wear whatever embroideries I choose. It is not for you, his hired servant, to interfere. Ghulam Hussein's hired servant? Roared the Hazara. Ghulam Hussein's hired servant? How? How dare you call me Ghulam Hussein's hired servant? My God, but you shall pay for this. That is an insult I take from no one. And before she was aware of his intentions, he had thrown her on the ground and then trampled on her. Huh? Proud, vain girl, he muttered again and again as he treated her with the greatest brutality. I'll humble you. I'll teach you whether it is for you to wear clothes fit for princesses or for slaves. From today, a new regime begins. Then seizing her embroidery, he snatched it from her now feeble grasp and almost immediately discovered the letter she had concealed within its folds. As this mal khattama bura kida variatih navishte kida. Ah, he cried exultingly, what we have here? What we have here, it is to Colonel Farad Shah. Perhaps, and would you fain be an Afghan general's wife after all, huh? دل تو در میخوای که خط نوشته که دی عشقی خط فراد شاه شروع کردی تو, huh? In spite of your father's wishes to the contrary, my God, we now know how to punish such want of patriotism. The girl's heart beat fast. The letter is to my father, she said as quietly as she could. You can read it. I wrote it myself. There is no one in all your ignorant household who could have written it for me. That is my proof that I wrote it myself. Liar, he muttered between his teeth. You cannot write. This is all make-believe, but I will have it read to me, and then I shall know how to act. Come, follow me, and at a respectable distance. Mind, the days of your pride are over. You have now to learn submission. The tears started into the girl's eyes. She saw that her chance was gone and that she had now the worst to expect. Nosugo and Bakulo, Ajego and Achlo. Very nice presenting it to you. I hope you have felt the pain and the torture that this mock engagement of Gul Begum with Muhammad Jan in the next village in order to protect her from the greater suffering of losing it to Farad Shah, the beast, with the master of the beasts. So this decision of the father that was made has resulted into such misery that now seems to be taking severe turns, and we shall present the rest of it to you on Amunji, the Hazara Pioneers Library, chapter